You've probably heard that ADHD can be a superpower. And yes, that's an exciting thought, but it also can be frustrating when you hear that because we know that there's a lot of struggles that go with ADHD and a lot of challenges that need to be overcome. So before ADHD can be a superpower, we have to put some treatments in place. And the four main treatments, they will be covered throughout the summit. But number one is education. So this summit will be jam-packed full of educational resources for you. You can educate yourself with fabulous books like ADHD 2.0. Part of the education is educating yourself about your child's specific ADHD. So that means having proper assessments by professionals. So a psychoeducational assessment, assessments from doctors, psychiatrists, occupational therapists, whatever it is. You want to have a really clear understanding of your child's diagnosis and what goes along with that diagnosis, because often it is more than just ADHD. Support. You want to have support in place. And a key part of support is your healthcare providers. So, whether that's pediatrician, psychiatrist, naturopath, you want to have a team of healthcare providers. You also want to have a village of support. So, your village may be neighbors and friends and family who can step in and give you a little bit of respite, or who can include your child on a play date. Your village may include a network of parents who get what you're going through, and parents that you can bounce ideas off of. And that's what the ADHD Village, the private Facebook group, is for. Parenting strategies are so important. Parents often feel like they're to blame for their child's ADHD behaviors. And parents, you are not to blame at all. Parenting does not cause ADHD. But parenting is a huge part of the solution of ADHD. As parents, we get to be the architects of our children's brains. So we want to have parenting strategies to help us parent these neurodiverse brains. Like, our kids don't come with a manual, and the parenting paradigms that worked when we were growing up don't seem to be working with this generation of kids. So there's new learning. Parenting is a skill. And the great news is, like any other skill, you can master your parenting. It can get better and better with education and with practice, with coaching. Your parenting can get better and better. And the last component I want to talk to you about is school. When you send your child to school for the day, their teacher is like their parent for the day. So it's so important to be working closely with your child's school and getting an IEP in place if that is appropriate. Okay, so what is ADHD? Cool fact I would like to share. A whole bunch of our speakers on the summit have ADHD themselves. So they really give us an interesting perspective of ADHD from their point of view. Erin Huey does a great job of this. And Dr. Shannon Irvin gives some ideas for how a neurotypical parent can experience what their neurodiverse child with ADHD is experiencing. So you're going to want to tune into Dr. Shannon and Erin Huey's interviews. So, what is ADHD? Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. ADHD is often misunderstood by the general public. This misunderstanding can have serious impact on children living with ADHD. They are not lazy or stupid or slow or bad. ADHD is not the result of poor parenting, so you can stop beating yourselves up. ADHD is a brain difference. ADHD is a neurobiological disorder. The name is somewhat deceiving because people with ADHD really don't have a deficit of attention. They have an abundance of attention. They're able to pay attention to multiple things at the same time with the same intensity. So when your child is sitting in class listening to their teacher, they're also noticing the person in front of them who's tapping their toe. They're noticing a bird that flew by. They're noticing the ceiling fan. They're noticing noise out in the hall. all those things are getting their attention with equal intensity. So even though they want to try really, really hard just to focus on the teacher, they're attending to all these other things because they have an abundance of attention. They also have the ability to focus on things that are of high interest to them. And this is called hyperfocus. The hyperactivity piece is also misleading because some people with ADHD may have the inattentive type, which means they don't have the hyperactivity of the body. And some people's hyperactivity is in their mind only and not in their physical bodies. And even the word disorder is kind of icky. I like the word difference. I find it's much more helpful. Attention difference hyperactivity or attention deficit hyperactivity difference. Anyway, try on some different names. Okay, so I love this quote by Dr. Stuart Shanker. See a child differently, see a different child. So this is where you have the power as the parent, as the architect of your child's brain. Your kids are always listening. Even when you're not saying anything, they're picking up on your body language, on your tone, on your facial expression. So the way you feel and think about ADHD is going to have an impact on how they feel about themselves. So the really cool thing is that for all the ADHD traits, there seems to be like an opposite positive. So if you put on the growth mindset hat, we can change the ADHD struggles or challenges into a positive. For example, a child, if you're thinking your child is easily distracted, they're naturally curious. Child who is compulsive, maybe they're a hard worker. They don't follow instructions. These are our innovators. They are easily bored. These kids thrive in highly stimulating environments. Think about the professionals out there, firefighters, police officers, emergency room doctors and nurses. These people need to be working in highly stimulating environments. Time blind, or only living in the now or not now. Well, on the positive side, people with ADHD can accomplish a lot in a short amount of time. Blurts things out, that could be thought of as very honest. May struggle with teamwork. So the opposite could be that these kids have a desire to be free and independent. These may be the future entrepreneurs. Hyper, how about high energy? Don't you wish you could bottle up your child's energy and sell it? You would be rich. Impulsive, how about fearless? Comfortable with the unknown. So remember, how you think about your child's ADHD has a huge impact on how they see themselves. So let's have a look at the symptoms of ADHD. So there's inattention. This is difficulty regulating, switching, and prioritizing attention. So remember, when they're hyper focused on something they're interested in, maybe they're playing Lego, it's going to be really hard to get them to stop playing Lego and come and do a chore or brush their teeth. They're easily distracted. Remember, there's that abundance of attention. There's lots going on that they're attending to. They may have difficulty staying focused on an activity, especially if it's not of high interest or if it's challenging, like schoolwork. Daydreaming, restless, unable to stay focused on a speaker. They may have trouble remembering verbal instructions, so it's really important to also offer them visuals. They may misinterpret instructions. So they may have a misunderstanding of what is said, and they often perceive things a little bit differently, or they might even forget after an incident has happened, they might forget the details. They may require prompts and reminders to complete their work. I'm sure that you all know this as you're trying to prompt your child to get ready for school in the morning. They struggle to keep their belongings organized. So think about the child who comes home from school with their backpack half open and things hanging out, and they forgot their lunch bag and half of their homework at school. Their bedroom's probably a mess. They're often losing things. difficulty planning, organizing, initiating tasks. These are all the executive functioning skills that happen in the prefrontal cortex. And troubles with time management, also called time blindness. These kids live in the now or not now. Then we have the hyperactivity component. This is the fidgeting and the squirming. That's where the fidget toys really help, or any sort of movement that they can have during the day at school. So if they have like a wobble stool or a cushion that they can sit on and wiggle, a wiggle cushion, things like that can really help them to stay focused. They have problems remaining seated. So why not allow them to get up and walk around and have a break? They may talk excessively or at inappropriate times. So these are the kids who are blurting out in the middle of a lesson when a teacher is teaching. They're often running and climbing, especially when they shouldn't be. These are the kids who stand at the dinner table, or during dinner time, they're bouncing around, take a bite of food and bounce around the living room and come back again. They struggle to settle into a quiet activity. They're constantly on the go as if driven by a motor. They're very hands-on. They want to touch everything and everyone, experiencing everything. Then we have the impulsivity piece, acting or reacting before considering consequences. So this can get our kids in trouble, right? They might be taking risks. They might blurt things out. They might say or do things that could hurt another friend's feelings. They interrupt conversations. They may begin work before all the instructions are given. So then they're missing key components of the instruction. They might be disturbing others who are playing or working, touching, grabbing, hitting others, pushing others, all that hands-on. Problems waiting for their turn or standing in line. Think about when you have to stand in line, especially for something exciting, how painfully difficult that is for these kids. And they make impulsive decisions. So those are the symptoms. Those are the things that we can see behaviorally from the outside. Also, kids with ADHD can be very sensitive to criticism and rejection. They have a distorted negative self-image or poor self-esteem. They're quick to anger. They are emotionally dysregulated. And ADHD often does not travel alone. So a child who has an ADHD diagnosis may also have a learning disability, anxiety, a speech delay, fine motor delays, ODD or oppositional defiance disorder, or OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. So that's why it's really important that you have all the education, all the assessment about your child, so you really understand your child's specific case. So what's going on inside the brain? So we want to be looking beyond the symptoms and have an understanding of what's going on inside your child's brain. So I love Dr. Edward Hallowell's explanation of what ADHD is. He says a person with ADHD has the power of a Ferrari engine, but with bicycle brakes. So the problems are caused by the mismatching of the powerful engine, powerful brain that's creative and smart and active and busy, with weak brakes. When you learn how to strengthen your brakes, your ADHD can be a superpower. So brakes, think about impulse control or emotional regulation, self-regulation. Those are the brakes. So the brakes in the kids with ADHD are very weak. We have to look for ways to strengthen their brakes. And once we strengthen their brakes and give them these strategies, then their ADHD can be a superpower. You're going to want to watch Dr. Edward Hallowell's interview from today, day 1, and he goes into this in more detail. Okay. Something pretty interesting about ADHD. We have a switch in our brain. It's an attention switch, and it kind of flips between being on, which is where we pay attention, we stay on task, we get things done, or off. This is when we're daydreaming. So in a neurotypical brain, the switch is on when we're on task and doing work and paying attention. And when we're not on task, the switch turns to off. So it's constantly going back and forth, on and off, on and off. In ADHD, the DMN, the default mode network, this is when we're off task. It looks like the word demon, I think for a reason. Anyway, in ADHD, that default mode network is on at the same time that the task positive network is on. So there isn't this switch that goes on and off for task positive and off task, task positive, off task. For ADHD, they're both on at the same time. So imagine how hard it is to stay on task when you also have this switch that's telling you to daydream that's on at the same time. So people with ADHD can also get more stuck in this default mode network, resulting in more feelings of frustration, failure, embarrassment, shame, negative critical thoughts. And if this is something that interests you, you're going to want to watch Brendan Mahan's interview. He's going to teach you how to overcome the wall of awful. So the wall of awful is like all these feelings, the frustration, the failure, the embarrassment, the shame, all those feelings that build up that prevent you from getting tasks done. So he's going to tell us how to overcome that wall of awful. Ants. I love this one. So ants are automatic negative thoughts. And Sarah Nicorak dives deep into this topic on day 3. So you're going to want to tune into Sarah's interview. This is heartbreaking. By the age of 12, a child with ADHD receives 10,000 more negative comments than a neurotypical peer. So imagine these 10,000 comments. Why can't you sit still? Can you just be quiet? Can you stop fighting? Can you keep your hands off your brother? I've told you this a million times. Why did you leave your lunch bag at school again? All these negative things, which really impacts their beliefs about themselves. And naturally, the human brain, 90% of our thoughts are automatic and negative. So we already have 90% of the thoughts in our brain are negative. Now you have an ADHD child that has 90% of their thoughts that are negative, plus they're getting all this negative around them, all this criticism. So to learn more about this, you will want to tune into Sarah Nicorak's interview on day 3. The cerebellum. So this is the part of the brain that has been known for balance, but it also plays a role in memory, cognition, emotional regulation. And Dr. Hallowell talks about some exercises that can help with brain balancing. And also on day 8, Alma Galvin gets into some exercises that you can do for your child's brain. The two sides of the brain are not communicating effectively in ADHD brains. Dr. L talks about this today on day 1, the parent whisperer, and he gives us some really beautiful ideas on how you can take care of your child's brain. The brain is always searching for dopamine and adrenaline. So this is why if your child is on, for example, a stimulant medication, that's what it does. It stimulates the brain and gives the brain the dopamine and the adrenaline that it's looking for. And these things are required, these dopamine and adrenaline is required to light up the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is where all the executive functions take place. Planning, problem solving, evaluating risks, time management, all the skills that are required for school, all takes place in the prefrontal cortex. And you need dopamine to fire that prefrontal cortex. So Jennifer Colari does a beautiful job explaining this in her interview. I believe that's on day 2. And Kelly Biltz today on day 1, she talks about how you can teach your child to create a dopamine menu. And Laura Von Poirier on day 8 will get into some of this as well as she talks about motivation. Okay, so the prefrontal lobe is not yet developed in your child. It actually takes 25 years to develop this part of the brain. And really, in kids with ADHD, it takes even longer. So, in Jennifer Kalari's interview, she's going to explain to you that your job is not to just be your child's parent, your job is to actually be their frontal lobe until their brain is developed. So, hang on, 25 years of doing some executive functioning work for your child until their brain is ready to do it for themselves. Another piece is the amygdala is underdeveloped in kids with ADHD and severe cases of ADHD. And the amygdala is like the emotional control center of the brain. This is the part of the brain that puts us into fight, flight, or freeze mode. And on day 5, all of our speakers get into this as we talk about emotional regulation. Okay. When emotions are high, intelligence is low. So this goes for our kids and for ourselves. So when you're in a state of fight, freeze, or flight, and you're feeling big emotions, what actually happens is your brain is there's a switch that turns off and you can't access your executive functioning skills in your prefrontal cortex. And you are then working from your midbrain, your limbic system. You're working from a primitive brain, that brain that has you in survival mode. So when your emotions are high and they take over, your intelligence is low. So that's a good thing to keep in mind as your child is having a meltdown when their emotions are really, really big. This is not the time to logic and reason with them because they physically are not able to do it.